Hey, Twisted listeners, I'm Cindy,
And I'm Diva
and this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder.
and Liz.
And it's a new day, it's a new list. We are doing quote unquote self-defense murders.
Hmm.
Nobody could see me do the air quotes, but Diva saw them.
Yeah, you said
Uh
quote unquote, so I think we got the vibe. Yeah.
I know, but I also physically did it, and then I felt like, I don't know, the
Oh, because we're
fucking
on a
boss from
podcast.
Office Space. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
very dumb. This is gonna be a really interesting topic. But do
Hmm.
we have any news? Is there anything we want to talk about? Anything exciting?
I
Dude,
don't know.
I was looking at those Jonah Hill text messages. Did you
God.
see that shit?
Yes, I did. Yes. That's the
Bro,
douchiest, inceliest,
so
abusivist shit.
bad. And
I
here's the
hate it.
thing is like
I hate it.
what's her name? Sarah? I don't really
Yeah.
know them. I
I
don't
forget.
follow
Yeah.
celebrities, but like I recognize trauma and I've definitely like seen that kind of shit before. And she said something that I think is really important to remember because, we all have to care very much about celebrities' feelings. But it's true. Like she said, what he said was abusive and wrong, but it doesn't mean he's a bad person. Like he's responding
Hmm.
to his own trauma. And if you look back on like interviews and things with Jonah Hill, people are like excessively mean to him about the way that he looks.
Yeah.
And it's like it's blatant and it's really
Mm.
fucked up. So I
Yeah.
see this whole thing as like a really unfortunate series of events that took place. And he's being vilified, but I think it's it's not that he doesn't deserve to be, of course. Like you can't pay your
Yeah.
trauma forward. You shouldn't do that. But
Right.
I do understand that he's coming from a place of insecurity because basically his whole life he's been, you
Yeah.
know, had negative comments about the way he looks. So
Yeah.
anyway, just another shithead victim of shithead society. So
Yeah, but, like, also famous rich dudes can be just abusive assholes as well, so,
oh,
like.
absolutely. And I'm not saying that I mean, what he wrote, I was like, dude, you can't like he's saying like, oh, these are my boundaries. And it's like your boundaries are for you. Like you can't use your
Mhm.
boundaries to control somebody else. Like if you don't
Yeah.
like what she does, you don't try to tell her to change when she's not really doing anything wrong. It's like if that doesn't work for you, then you can remove yourself from the situation.
My
That's
boundary is
fine.
that you can never wear purple, Cindy. It really bothers me. That's my boundary. So,
Right, right, and it's like, "Okay, well, I'm still going to do that because there's nothing wrong with it,
yeah.
but we don't have to hang out when I wear purple. I won't come around, okay? I promise."
Okay.
See how much healthier that was, you guys? Anyway,
Oh,
I was just reading it right now, and I was like, everybody kinda sucks in this situation, but also, like, I do feel for him from the perspective of, like, he's been
yeah.
kind of beat up his whole life,
But
like, his
also
whole
there's so
professional
many
life.
guys in the comments being like, "It's fine, he's setting boundaries." And I'm like, "Oh my god, you all misunderstand what all of this means." Like,
But also it's like, thank you so much for raising your hand so we don't have to waste our time, like, trying to figure
yeah.
out if you're shitty or not, you know?
"Hi, I'm an incel." Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever. Anyway, I know he has, like, a baby now and whatever, and I wish all of them the best, and I'm glad they're not together, and hopefully, there's less toxicity in their new relationships. But anyway,
Yes.
I thought that was
Hopefully.
interesting and shitty, and,
Yes.
made me feel bad about America. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Alright, anything else now that we've talked about celebrity news, which is super normal,
Yeah.
something
I
we do
mean,
often.
I'm just gonna specify that the self-defense murders, I did an even split, but they're kind of a mix of maybe things where it's more likely they were self-defending and things where they're
Yes.
using that, but for silly reasons.
Well, when I picked this, my idea was actual self-defense murders where it's like, yes, they
Yeah.
deserved to, be the person who did the killing is righteous in that action, but
Uh-huh.
I ended up my first case, as you'll see, is the opposite of that. So, it's
Okay.
interesting, and I actually haven't picked my second case, just to be honest, and I'm hoping to choose one that is like a contrast, kinda like you did,
Mhm.
because I
Okay.
think it's a really interesting way to kinda look at this list. So,
Perfect.
Anyway, I chose so you
Mhm.
go first. Just so you guys know, I am working on a Patreon. It's a case that we covered long, long ago. We covered it, Diva covered it in like a 10-minute segment. So I'm going to expand on that quite a bit and do it on the Patreon soon. And then Diva's also working on a new Patreon. So we'll let you guys know when those drop. So if you want to join
Yeah.
at that point to get maximum, bang for your buck, we'll let you guys know. But anyway, should we get to it?
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
All
All
right.
right.
So this is like an epic case I wrote way too much on. I had to just like stressfully I had to cut it down like 3 different times so it wasn't like 45 minutes, but we'll see.
Yeah.
This is the case of Nicole, who goes by Nikki Addimando.
Okay.
This happened in 2017 in Poughkeepsie, New York.
Poughkeepsie.
And Poughkeepsie, haha.
Poughkeepsie. I had a man I'm sorry, can I just tell you a really quick story
Yeah,
about Poughkeepsie? So I went on
Poughkeepsie.
vacation and I went to upstate New York and we stayed in various places. We saw like Timothy Leary's like weird like hippie drug house. And then we drove into Poughkeepsie to go karaoke, which was hilarious. And I had a man who was very far into his 40s, which is totally fine. Kind of balding, kind of just like looked like a regular dude. And he started hitting on me, and his pickup line was that he had just moved out of his mother's basement and bought his own house because he'd been working at the same grocery store since he was in high school and he'd saved up enough money to buy a house. And at the time, I kind of like made fun of him because I'm an asshole. And now I'm like, that is a solid man right there. He's got
Aw.
a long term job. He's
Yeah.
obviously loyal. He's a homeowner. He's
Mhm.
enjoying a lovely night of karaoke. So anyway, that's my Poughkeepsie story. That's a trippy little town.
Tales of
Mm,
Poughkeepsie.
yeah,
Yeah.
lots of abandoned buildings. Anyway, go on.
Okay, Poughkeepsie. Here
Sorry.
we are. It's okay. That guy's hanging
Diva
out,
is
and
not having it.
I'm like, oh my god, now I'm coughing. No, yeah. So that guy's there, the guy with the
Yes,
house from his, and
guarantee.
so is Nikki. Yeah, I'm just like deep breathing because I'm prepared to yell a lot, and you're gonna yell a lot.
Oh, okay. Okay,
Um,
great.
so Nikki at this time was 28. She lives with her two kids, 5-year-old Ben and 7-year-old Faye, and their father, her boyfriend Christopher Grover.
Okay.
Nikki was a stay-at-home mom. Everyone who knew her said she was a really great mom, great person. I won't get into all the things she did. We got to get right to it here.
Okay.
But like mom stuff.
Okay.
Chris is a gymnastics coach as his profession, and
Okay.
by many accounts, Chris is a great guy and a great coach. His students like him.
Okay. So everybody's cool.
Nope. Yeah, and yeah, everyone's happy. No, so there's lots of signs though, and we're going to talk about a lot more of them. But just to hint that there's a lot of signs to outsiders that there's abuse in the home, because people notice
Ugh.
bruises and injuries on Nikki constantly, and the classic stuff like her
Mm-mm.
wearing glasses or long sleeves when it's hot, or like just sort of things to cover herself up.
Right. Right.
Classic stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump right into the event of, and then I'm going to like kind of unfold the abuse
Okay.
as later on, like in the trial.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm just going to say up top, like spoiler alert for like some of the most extreme domestic abuse I've ever read about.
Oh my god,
Um,
really?
yes, like
Oh.
extreme in caliber here.
Okay. Not looking forward to this, but okay.
Yep. So September 27th, 2017, CPS workers came to the home because someone had anonymously reported Nikki having bruises on her face and chest
Okay.
constantly.
Mhm.
And Nikki denied it. Oh, everything's fine. You know the routine, right?
Right.
So they left without like doing anything. But the next day, and I will detail this day step by step later on at the trial. But basically, after an onslaught of abuse from Chris, Nikki ends up shooting Chris in the head.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, there's a lot more
Okay.
to that, but I'm going to break it down later. But
Oof.
just to jump into the action here, Nikki ends up taking the two kids and kind of leaves in her car haphazardly, like nothing's packed. She just kind of gets in and goes.
She's
Um,
panicking because
yeah,
it wasn't a planned situation.
yes. Around
Okay.
2 a.m., a cop approached the car because she was stopped at a green light. Presumably, she had like
Mhm.
nodded off or was just like not paying attention.
Yeah.
When Nikki spoke to the officer, she was hysterical, crying. She wasn't wearing shoes. Like she clearly left in a hurry.
Yeah.
She was frantically saying to him, "Oh my God, he's dead." She says right away it was self defense, and then she also is clearly relieved and says, "Oh my God, it's over. It's over."
Wow, okay.
So she tells the officer right away about the CPS visit and about how she shot Chris in the midst of a struggle after all this abuse, again, which I will get into in just a second. So she's straight up
Yeah,
about it right away. She never says, I didn't do it.
right.
During her interrogation, Nikki tells the exact same story, letting them know that multiple, like too many for me to list, a
Mhm.
paragraph's worth of different state and county offices, hospitals, therapists, and official institutions all had records that she was abused.
So
And
everybody knew and nobody was doing anything, essentially.
yeah, and she was actually lied to and assured that the questions were just a formality and she would get to go home to her kids, but that was a lie. She's arrested and taken to prison right away.
I mean, they do that all the time. They're complete pieces
Sure.
of garbage, so it's not
Yeah.
really surprising, but yeah.
Yeah. So in 2019, Nikki's trial starts for second degree
Mhm.
murder. And this is when I'm going to get into the evidence of the abuse and then what happened the day of and whole history. So
Okay.
the evidence of Nikki's abuse is so fucking abundant and honestly very rare because a lot of women try to not report things, right?
Right. Yeah.
For fear of their abuser. But this shit is like mountains of evidence.
Okay.
So it includes dozens of eyewitnesses who came forward to corroborate bruises and injuries she had, suspicious things they saw, tons and tons of witnesses.
Shit.
Official sexual assault examination records from when she had been admitted to the hospital for extremely violent rapes that Chris had
Mhm.
subjected her to.
Oh my god.
And yeah, and other kinds of physical assaults. Numerous times she was so injured she had to go to the hospital. And she said there were lots of other times she didn't, but there were just some times that were so severe she had to get treatment.
Right.
Um, Nurses
Ugh.
thoroughly documented the severe injuries she had, like, as doctors do,
Mhm.
and the treatment and everything. Therapists also had years long records. She had also documented injuries herself, taking photos as, then in her mind, she was doing this for a custody battle for if they got
Right.
divorced.
Right, right, right.
This gets so much worse. So jurors also heard
Ugh.
from a therapist to whom Nikki disclosed in 2014 that Chris was actually taping his violent rapes of her and uploading the
Whoa.
videos to Pornhub.
What the fuck?
Yep. She even
So
showed the
oh
therapist.
my god, that just gave me, like the realization of what you said just, like, hit
Yeah,
me, and it made me,
yeah,
like, physically fucking ill. So these are, like, legitimate rape videos on
yes,
fucking Pornhub.
yes, yes, yes.
Holy fuck.
Yes. She even showed him like a part of a video just to like show him that it's real. And the therapist later
Mm-mm.
found them himself and took screenshots of them as evidence, thinking smartly ahead this is going to come up in a legal thing against this guy, right?
God damn, dude.
So multiple different people over the years documented the Pornhub screenshots as well,
Mhm.
as if we didn't have enough evidence. Um,
Yeah.
so Nikki described how the CPS visit on the stand, um, how the CPS visit on the 27th clearly made Chris snap, but like snap in a way that was like calm and creepy. Like he basically had
Mhm.
clearly decided he was going to kill her, like a hundred
Right.
percent.
Okay.
But in a calm way. He apparently got his gun out, which he had multiple different weapons and guns. He got out his gun and was like very calmly cleaning it and loading it while he
Mhm.
told her about how he knew how to shoot someone to kill them. He joked about shooting her to make it so that she was just brain dead, but like alive, like a vegetable forever. Really cool
Mm-mm.
things to like tell her about.
So he's
Basically,
just trying to scare the shit out of her.
yeah, he's just thinking of anything he can to tell her, like, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
Um,
Fun
he,
and creative ways.
yeah. He then sexually assaulted her, as he was so often did.
Yep.
And a little bit later that day, he says to come sleep on him, or like, I think it was a way of control. So like you're touching me, so you can't move without me knowing.
Without me knowing, yeah, if you try to get up, I'll feel it.
Yes.
Ugh.
When he has fallen asleep, she basically tries to scriggle away, and she
Yeah?
grabs his gun, which had been beside, like right beside him, and this wakes him up. Um,
Mhm.
and a kind of struggle, a brief struggle happens for the
Ensues, yeah.
gun. She has the gun, and he says, quote, here's what you're going to do. You're going to give me the gun. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill myself, and then your kids will have no one.
And she's just like, "Yeah, that's cool, I'm gonna do that." The fucking, like, audacity of this man to say that to her while she's holding the
Yeah.
gun,
She
like,
also
fuck
he also
him.
said you won't do it. I know you won't. So she shot
Joke's
him.
on you, Jack. Yeah,
Yeah, she shot him.
I would
The
too. Fuck.
investigators also pull his computer searches from that day and night, which included, and this is not even a full list, but quote, when shoot her, will they know she was asleep when examining her? Will they know she was asleep when shot? Part of brain
Oh
to
my
shoot in
god.
suicide. Yeah. And we're sure that Chris made those searches.
Wow. What the
Hmm.
fuck?
Yep.
Holy
Um,
shit.
but despite these wheelbarrows of evidence, Cindy, there is still a fucking asshole prosecutor who wants to disprove all of this.
Of course, because this piece of shit doesn't have anything else to do. Is it a man? Is it a man?
I actually think it's a woman.
You know what? That tracks. I get
Yeah.
that. She's
No,
probably a
yeah.
fucking pick me.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
So for their case here, everything I couldn't stop writing everything the prosecution does and says, and like that's what I had to trim down because I was like, okay, everything's
Mhm.
angering. You have to like limit how many of these things you pick.
Yeah.
So towards their case, they show a text that Nikki did send to a friend a few weeks before she killed Chris that said, quote, I haven't figured out a way to kill him without being caught, so I'm still here. Like
Mhm.
LOL. Which honestly, given what she was going through, that's a fucking it's fair to joke about killing him. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Fuck.
unreasonable. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean there was a whole murder plan. She's just like, oh, if I could kill him, I'd be out of here. It's just like whatever.
I mean, I've said I'm gonna kill Rory like 100 fucking times. You know what I mean? And
But I
like,
mean, given what she's going through, it's fair, like
right,
100% fair.
absolutely. But it's also just
Um,
like not, I don't know.
it's not evidence really,
No, not really.
of a plan. So
No.
they also claimed that she was super calculated in trying not to get caught after the fact, which I don't really think is true. She pretty much just left.
Yeah.
That's
And
about
like
it.
stopped somewhere and got pulled over for like being erratic and
She admitted it
immediately
right
admitted
away.
it.
If she
That's
was going to be
not like,
calculated in fleeing, she would have taken her kids and flown to a different country. Like, you know what
if
I mean?
that's her
Like, she could
best
have.
like calculated escape, then she's got bigger
It was,
problems. Like, come
yeah.
on. How
The
embarrassing
process
to even try to say that. I'm sorry. I'm
A
sorry.
major thing for the prosecution was also that they argued that she killed Chris not in a struggle, but while he was asleep on the couch, so that it was like more premeditated this way. But here's the thing. This was not possible to prove, and the official medical examiner got up on the stand and said, we cannot prove if he was sleeping or not. All that we know is that it was to his head. So I'm not sure if the theory is because the gun was pressed to his head that it had to have been was asleep when he was asleep, but that's definitely not necessarily true. You can put a gun to someone's head when they're awake.
I mean, that
Um,
happens all the time. That's
yes.
that's stupid. Like, yeah, I mean, think about how many toddlers like accidentally kill. I mean, they said apparently I read something that said like a toddler's shot somebody every like 5 days so far this year.
Great.
And
That's
and
great.
like so it's like if they shoot them in the head, does that
Yeah.
mean that the person was sleeping and the toddler like premeditated the
But I
murder?
mean,
Like,
it wasn't
no, it's
right to his head. It was pressed to his head. That's why people
I'm
might.
just saying like
I'm just saying that's
during a
where they probably pull
struggle,
the sleep thing from.
I know it's just
Yeah.
bullshit because it's like, okay, well then where's like the gunshot shit on the fucking pillow where his
Yeah.
head was laying? You know what I
Well,
mean?
here,
Like,
it couldn't be proven. The second thing is that Chris's DNA was 99.9% of the DNA on the gun, and hers was a trace amount. So, like, to me, that, and to the defense, that is consistent with him handling it all day long and her
yeah,
very briefly getting it just to do this and dropping it.
right.
Um, the other thing is, honestly, even if she did lie about that part of it and she did walk up and shoot him while he was sleeping, he had been threatening to kill her all day long. So it kind of
And
doesn't
was
matter to me.
Googling and was
Yeah.
I mean, the fact there's proof that she had reason to fear for her
Yeah.
life in that
Yes.
moment and all
That
day,
day.
every day,
All day. Yeah. And that
all
day in
day.
particular,
But that day in
especially.
particular, yes.
Yes. He was like, hi, I'm going to kill you. So yeah, if he falls asleep and she takes her opportunity, I don't even think it's not self defense, right?
Yeah,
She's
no.
taking the opportunity she has.
And, like, listen, she could have tried to get away, but here's the thing, like, because I'm sure people are like, "Well, why didn't she try to leave and just, like, leave him sleeping?" She probably thought that if she got halfway out the room and he woke up and still had control of the gun, that he would fucking kill her. So I guarantee you her plan was not to pick up the gun and kill him with it. Her plan was to pick up the gun and leave, like, not let him kill her with it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
like, God. God, it's so obvious. Why does our society hate women so much? Anyway, sorry, go on.
It gets so much worse. Get ready to get even more mad. This is barely an appetizer of why you're gonna be mad.
God.
So the crux of the prosecution's case, besides this assumption that he was sleeping, which again we don't even know, we can't prove,
Mhm.
is to cast doubt on Nikki's claims of abuse, long-standing abuse, by pointing to the fact that she had described 3 separate other incidents of abuse in her life, which to me, guess what? You can be abused sexually multiple times.
And
Like,
also, like, why don't we just take a random handful of cases of children whose fathers abuse them and find out how many of
mhm,
their mothers were abused by somebody? Because it is a fucking pattern. You
yes,
find those people when you have been sexually
yes,
abused, you will see, unless you get like heavy therapy and
mhm.
are very, very careful, you
You
are
seek
going to
out
repeat those
similar
patterns.
dynamics in
That is
people.
proof
Yeah.
that it did happen, not proof that it didn't if you pay attention to anything at all. That is
Okay.
really upsetting. I'm sorry. I'm
So,
very mad.
yeah. So
I
there's
felt so
basically so they're both slut shaming her by claiming some of these were consensual, which I'll get into, and they're saying
mhm.
that just because someone says they were assaulted multiple times means they're making them up. So the first of these incidents that they detail is a rape that happened when she was a really young child. I believe she was like 5.
Ugh,
And there was corroborating evidence for this, including a witness who was a child who was also assaulted by the same guy on the same night. This guy
and they're trying to
assaulted
say
2
that it
kids.
didn't fucking happen? Or
Yes.
what, that she wanted it? I mean, how far is this scumbag prosecutor willing to go?
So they heavily criticized her with this and the other incidents for having a fragmented memory of it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is how childhood trauma works. This is how trauma works in general, no matter how old you are.
It's like
Um,
all this prosecutor is doing is showing that they're an ignorant piece of shit.
I was so fucking mad when that Brett Kavanaugh assholes, like abusee, the victim, was
Yeah.
like didn't remember it until adulthood, and everyone was criticizing her for that. And I'm like, that is a thing. That is a fucking thing that
That is like
happens.
textbook. It's
Yes.
textbook. Take Psych
Oh my
101. Like,
god,
pay
that's a
attention in
thing that
class, you
happens.
fucking morons. Oh, I'm so mad.
So
I
the
hate
second
everyone. Continue.
alleged abuse incident that poor Nikki here was subjected to was a relationship that she describes as exploitative slash abusive with an older married police officer who took her in while she had briefly separated from Chris back in the early days when they were still dating. And
Okay.
she's just someone to kind of stay with and she thought was a friend. And she again, he's married, but essentially he would come into her room at night and assault her, and she essentially didn't fight back because of this power dynamic, but it was not
Right.
consensual.
Right.
She just like was like, okay, he's housing me and he's holding everything over me,
And he's a cop, so
and he's a cop.
terrifying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The prosecution said that this was an affair, and she wasn't really afraid of Chris if she would have an affair, and Chris wasn't really abusive if he let her move out.
If he let, oh my god, this is
These are the things they
ooh,
say.
this
Um,
person should not be allowed to practice law. They should be have tomatoes thrown at them every fucking day. Like, what kind of trash bag fucking argues this? Like, why do you want this woman to go to prison so much that you're gonna do like, oof.
mm,
God, I
mm.
fucking hate prosecutors with like every fiber of my being. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
The third assault was
Oof.
this is really horrible, was by a maintenance worker who had the key to her apartment, and she kind of, like, briefly kind of talked to or befriended, and he took that as an in to, like, basically break into her apartment and assault her. Um, this actually happened multiple times while she was also being abused by Chris, so she was being raped by 2
Mm-mm.
different people. Um,
Jesus fuck, dude.
yeah, and people are like, "Oh, this is too fantastical," and I'm like, "No, guys are terrible." Like, I fully believe this could happen. It wouldn't be the
Yeah.
first time.
No. No.
Um, and the prosecution said, "Well, you weren't really abused by Chris. It was this other guy, and you were just mixing it up. You can't remember."
'Cause on top of everything else, you're also stupid and,
Yeah,
like, don't know your own truth.
yeah, and the
Nice.
prosecution essentially also dismissed all the photos of the bruises and injuries on Nikki as either self-inflicted or from quote unquote rough foreplay with her other partners, which is essentially
No.
slut shaming her for being
Yeah.
abused by other people.
And victim blaming and all other manner of
Yeah,
disgusting
like or you were
tactics.
just so promiscuous that you can't even tell when you were being raped, right?
Jesus Christ.
Okay, but the prosecution, I don't think at any point explains away the hospital records. Like
Yeah,
to
like,
me,
they just pretend those don't exist? Like,
yeah, yeah, okay.
Ugh.
Also, I don't know a lot of rough foreplay where you get, like, punched in the face. Like, there's pictures of her with, like, black eyes and shit, like,
I mean,
but
that's
okay.
definitely a thing, but, like, not I wouldn't call that even when
Uh,
that's consensual, I don't really know that that's, like, a good thing, and
it's not great.
especially but that's a fucking but we know that this is all a fucking reach.
It's insane. Yeah. They also go into how much Chris's family loves him, and they found all these people in his gymnastics and family life to say he's a great dude. And it's like, yeah, no fucking duh. Dudes do not act abusive to everyone in their fucking lives all the time. And there's some of the other reasons why they get into about why they say Chris could not have been an abuser. And this is not an exhaustive list, but just a highlight of the most stupid things the prosecution says. I shit you not. Here's why Chris couldn't be an abuser. He did the grocery shopping.
Uh, okay,
He
good
allowed
God.
Nikki to keep the household budget.
Oh, he allowed her to? He allowed like, that they even frame it that way
Yeah.
makes that
Yeah.
point null and void.
Well, they're
That's
saying if he was
insane.
abusive, he would have total control. So the fact that he allowed her to do that means he wasn't abusive.
Okay.
Um,
Oh my
she
god.
was allowed to hang out with family and friends and also see all these therapists. So all of that means he wasn't really abusive. Um,
Right.
th- they also point out that several different times she texted him, chewing him out, calling him an asshole. So they literally say that he wasn't abusive because you'd be too afraid to say that if he was.
Yeah, that's not real. I can tell you from personal experience, I had a boyfriend that punched me in the face more than one time, and never once did I lose my sass. Never once did I
No,
lose my love of calling him a huge piece of shit.
no,
And
no.
you suffer the consequences, but you also, like, kinda don't fucking care. Like, if you're spicy enough, like,
Yeah, no.
you know
You're not all women are going to respond the same way. Some people might be afraid. Some people might not always
No,
be.
and
Um,
there's even women who are, like, held by serial killers and shit, like
it's
Ariel
still sassy.
Castro,
Yeah,
and they're still sassy, so it's like, give me a
exactly.
fucking
Yeah.
break, like, this is ridiculous, all of this is ridiculous. Okay.
The other thing they say is Chris was excited to be a dad when she was pregnant.
Oh, so he
Um,
couldn't possibly abuse her, like, what?
yeah, with Faye, their oldest child, and to that, this is Nikki's exact response when they like said like on cross exam, right? Like, oh, he was excited to be a dad when you were pregnant with Faye, wasn't he? And here's what she says, quote, he put a burning spoon in my vagina when I was pregnant with Faye.
Oh my god.
Things were very different.
Wow.
So
What the fuck?
here's the response of the prosecutor, by the way, to that exact comment. Quote, the burning spoon incident you said was a result of your snarky comment to him. Cindy's mouth
Uh,
is open. Yeah, I know. They literally are like, but didn't you bring that on yourself? The burning spoon in your vagina. Didn't you? Weren't you were snarky though, right? Remember when you were snarky?
Listen, I actually
Oh my god.
legitimately do this. I need to know who this prosecutor is so I can send them an email that may or may not get me arrested, and I have definitely written letters to many people before, and this person's on that fucking list. This person should, like, die in a fire and then burn in hell forever. Like, seriously. Like,
Yeah, her
what the
name is
fuck?
Chana Kraus, C H
Her
A
name
N
is
A
Asshole
Kraus.
Fuckwad is her fucking name.
Um,
What a piece
yeah,
of dog shit.
I I just cannot like fathom the anything about this. Okay. By the way,
Uh,
a court psychologist who examined her for numerous tests
mhm.
and psychological tests and did 16 hours of interviews with her testified that she was a reliable reporter. She did not exaggerate. I believe everything she says.
Wow, so they
Um,
had a professional straight up come forward and be
yeah,
like, "Nah, she's not lying," and they were still
yeah,
like, "No,
yeah,
yes, she is, because 'cause I'm a psycho prosecutor who wants to fucking put
yeah.
people behind bars because 'cause I'm crazy." Okay.
So there's a fuck ton of evidence, but the prosecutor actually did did succeed in getting several blows to her case and things thrown out. Granted, it's kind of like sprinkles on top of this giant cake of evidence they did get to present, but
Right.
there are a lot of things that they still, even more evidence that I don't even have time to get into right now, that the fucking jury did not even get to hear about because it's thrown out.
Jesus
For
Christ.
example, a nurse saying testifying about her encounter with Nikki in the hospital, saying she named Chris as her attacker, was dismissed as hearsay.
That how oh my good fucking god.
Yeah, just as one example.
Wow.
There's multiple other things. There's also a bunch of stuff about the Pornhub account. The jury didn't get to see all the circumstantial things definitively kind of, all but definitively proving that that was Chris posting it, it got all blurred out. So it's just so
Okay.
it wasn't definitive. So that's just one another small example. So Nikki said that taking the stand was really discouraging and humiliating. I mean, this is the fucking Pornhub shit is up in a courtroom. Like, this is humiliating for her.
Yeah.
Um,
Jesus
but she
fucking
did so because she
Christ.
wanted to get back to her kids, but she just felt like they didn't believe her at all. She would just describe it as like super degrading. Um, all right, you ready for this?
No, I'm
In
really not.
2019, the jury found Nikki guilty of second-degree murder. Uh,
Oh my god. Fuck all of these people. I hope you don't listen to us because 'cause you're shit, but I hope you're fucking ashamed. I hope you're fucking ashamed.
they're probably not because they're big dicks. So
Yeah.
uh, a journalist who later interviewed some of these jurors heard just a bunch of fucking nonsense from them. This is clearly not a winning batch of people.
Yeah.
And here's some of the angering things they said. I won't get into all of it, but they said, "Oh well, she had a car. She could have left. Why didn't she just leave?" Which is again a classic thing that's always said in the case of abused women. That I'm like, you do not get how abuse works, you fucking asshole. If you ever in your life, anyone listening to this thinks you're gonna say the sentence about an abused woman, why wouldn't she just leave? Take it out. Don't do it. Don't say
Take
it.
it out of your stupid fucking mouth. Read a
Swallow
goddamn
your
book.
sentence. It's
Yeah.
not true. That's
Oh
not a valid
my
thing to ask.
god.
They also all bought that he was sleeping with, again, no solid evidence, and that really seemed to sway people. Just because the prosecutor said it, it kind of just got in their mind, right?
That's pathetic. What a
So
bunch of fucking weak-minded assholes.
shortly after her conviction, ironically, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, molesty guy himself,
Mhm.
passed the DVSJA, the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act. So women, or I should say people eligible for this act, can have their sentences reduced to as little as 5 years in prison. So it doesn't overturn convictions; it just reduces sentences if you've been abused.
Okay, and how long was her conviction? Or I mean her sentence.
Um, I'm getting to that right now.
Oh, okay.
So because it was passed like right as she was convicted, they
Mhm.
folded it into evaluating her sentence. So in
Oh.
2020, a judge, the asshole judge of this case, you can imagine is amazing,
Mhm.
sentences her. Denies her relief under this act, saying she did not meet the criteria, and gives her a 19 years to life sentence.
She absolutely, like, how does she not meet the criteria? What is where oh god, no wonder I got bad vibes in Poughkeepsie. These people are the fucking,
So he
like,
issued a report that Nikki didn't meet
poop.
the criteria because her defense used the quote unquote battered woman syndrome defense, to which they're like, no, they actually are like, that's not it. We actually just said this was straight up self defense. Like,
Yeah,
it's not the
like,
same thing.
yeah, no.
He said a bunch of angering things, which I don't have time to get into. One of them was that
Mhm.
he said the nature of her abuse was undetermined.
How is it undetermined when there's fucking records of it? Like, multiple records
So
from
many records.
multiple, like,
Hospitals,
agencies.
therapists, friends, family, witnesses, fucking
How is
police
this,
officers,
like
domestic violence nonprofits. Multiple times she ran to shelters and they took pictures of her, right?
oh my god, what a fucking
Um,
piece of dog shit. I'm so
and
fucking angry right now.
undetermined. Here's a quote, by the way, from Judge McLaughlin, from that report. Quote, sorry, this is in her sentencing. I just think that this is a really wild way to phrase "you were raped." Quote, "It's clear that you've been abused by other men. You may have reluctantly consented to intimate acts you were very uncomfortable with." And I'm
No.
like,
No,
just
no,
say
no.
you were raped.
But
Like,
they're not. What they're saying is, "I don't believe you were raped." Like, they're trying to put it
yeah,
on her.
but like
This person
reluctantly
should not be a
consented
judge.
is
This
a
person
weird
should
ass
not
phrase. If
we need to
you
start a petition to get this person
consent,
removed because that's
reluctantly
terrifying.
consented.
Reluct that's it is terrifying that this person gets to decide other people's fates because they clearly have, like, something deeply, deeply wrong with them.
Yeah, and
Like,
also he's buying in. This case also has a lot of this shit where they're like, "Oh well, if you didn't fight back violently, you were quote unquote reluctantly consenting." And I'm like, "No, no, no. You're not consenting."
that like,
Like,
just because you're not willing to fucking, like, kill somebody in that moment doesn't mean, like,
yeah,
well, then you must not have been that not okay with it, and it's like, well, this kinda case is exactly why women are
yeah,
afraid to fight back.
yeah.
Oh my god.
So Nikki and her team then applied for clemency, which New York Governor Hochul denied,
Oh, that's
despite
funny because she wasn't just a worthless wet rag of a person. Ugh.
despite petitions with hundreds of thousands of signatures and a widespread public outcry and tons of organizations, crying for Nikki's release and clemency, the New York governor denied her repeatedly.
Can you please put governor in heavy quotes? Because that worthless
Governor,
sack of
yeah,
trash, like, oh my
quote unquote governor.
god.
Okay, I'm
Ugh.
almost done here. I'm almost done here. But thank fuck, there's kind of a happy ending here for Nikki.
Mm,
Not 100%, but well, I'll take it. So, an appellate court actually on appeal, the decision of that asshole Judge McLaughlin was reversed. So it was found she
okay.
did meet the criteria for the
Yeah,
DVSJA.
fucking duh.
And they
Ugh.
specifically issued a statement being like, everything that guy said is bullshit, and it's your abuse was very much determined and not undetermined. And like,
Yeah, what the motherfuck?
yeah, so they specifically said, no, she did actually provide like ample fucking proof that she was abused. Um,
Yeah,
and again, like you shouldn't even have to in a way, but this is a case where she
no.
has so much. She has so much proof.
Oh god.
Um, so finding that she did meet the criteria, finally, this court decision, like I said, doesn't overturn her conviction, but it reduced her sentence to 7.5 years total. So she
Okay.
is still in prison, but she is set to be released in 2024. So she will have served 7 years.
Okay. I mean, that's fucked up, but she's almost there. It's like just
Yeah,
hang on for a
yeah,
couple more months and you'll be
yeah.
out. Like,
But honestly, it's just still fucked up because like she's been away from her two young kids, like for their whole childhoods. And if fucking white
she's being
guys can
released
be
as a
like,
felon.
yeah, and it's exactly. And if white guys can be like, I was scared a black person existed, help, and they get off, the popcorn
Yeah,
guy fucking got off on
yeah,
self defense. The guy
right,
who listened to black people's loud music and was scared, he got self defense. George Zimmerman got self defense. Kyle
right.
Rittenhouse got self defense. But this woman fucking can't, I guess.
Does not get fucking
Um,
self-defense.
no, because we hate women in this country.
We do.
And
We hate
also, I just
everybody
want
who's
to
not yeah, we know.
I,
We all know.
I normally do not besmirch the families of murder victims, but in this case, Chris's family are a bunch of fucking assholes because they released a bunch of statements being super upset by the sentence reduction, talking about how awesome Chris is. They've stood against her this whole time, and I'm like, y'all, I'm sorry you can't believe this, but when there's a pile of evidence that your son or whoever brother was a piece of shit, get over yourself. Like,
Yeah, just deal with it.
seriously. Oh my god.
Ew.
Uh, maybe that's why he was the way he was because he had a shit family. So
'Cause he had people enabling him. Yeah,
coddling him. Yeah.
that's often the case. Yeah. Yep.
So
I have
finally,
experience with that too.
I just wanted to say check out the website for the advocacy group. Quote. It's called Survived and Punished, which profiles tons of stories. They have like different chapters by state. And they profile
Ugh.
tons of stories on their website about women who killed their abuser and were met with harsh prison sentences, including life sentences. And
Mm-mm.
a huge percentage of them are women of color and black women who
That's
are
shocking.
literally never taken seriously in this situation. And
Right.
also that act that Cuomo passed, the DVSJA, like does not work most of the time. It's written very stupidly and loosely so that judges like that asshole judge can find like pretty much any reason to deny it.
I think what we should say is it was written very intentionally to just be some sort of
Yes,
Democratic talking point so that they could get
a superficial
idiot
thing. Yeah,
liberals to fucking vote for them and then go to sleep happy at night while the world crumbles around their fucking feet.
but
But
it
I
doesn't
did my
help as
job.
much. It doesn't help as
Yeah.
much as you'd think. Yeah. And there's a
Doesn't help
couple
at all, and
other
nobody actually gives a shit.
and there's other horror stories I don't have time to get into that are of black women who literally had people witness with their fucking eyeballs them being pulled by their hair and abused in horrific ways, and they were later found to not qualify for that act for that relief.
Right.
Um,
Right, because we
yeah,
are a country of performative bullshit, performative allyship,
yes,
it's just gross.
yeah. So that's Nikki's story. There's a whole podcast about it called "Believe Her." There's tons of websites advocating for her, but thankfully she is getting out soon, at least.
Yeah.
And it's just some of the most horrific stories I've ever heard. This guy was a fucking monster. So
Jesus Christ. Well, I have one that just to jump right in because I'm excited to tell it now even more because the contrast of this is we're gonna be like
okay.
punching our computer screens and potentially like I don't know. Sometimes I just want to metaphorically punch society in the face. And then also
Mm,
like I wish there was a way to actually do that. Anyway, this is the story of Mavrick Fisher and Grant Whitaker. This is a really interesting story. And also, okay, guys, I had to put my dog down on Friday, which
oh,
was
so
4
sad.
days ago. It was terrible. I've had dogs since I was 13 years old. Like, I've never not had one. I'm 40, so it's been a long fucking time, and it's been really weird. Like, I'll drop something on the floor, and I'm like, "Elliot will get it." I'm like, "No, no, you won't." And then, like, just little things that remind you. It's really fucked up. And my dog was deaf. And it was a really unique experience having a deaf dog, and I think weirdly, that's why I chose this case, because, like, subconsciously, that was on my mind. This is a murder that takes place within the deaf community, and it's
Okay.
really, really interesting. But I do wanna just say right off the top that I find it really strange that it was not bigger news, and I think one of the reasons it's not bigger news is because these communities are so, like, marginalized and disenfranchised, like, anybody who's not part of, like, the mainstream, it's just, like, nobody gives a shit about it. So in the deaf community, there's this thing called website called the Daily Moth. It's like a news site for deaf people, like, by and for deaf people, and they have been following this very closely, but the mainstream, like, never really talked about it because it's, like, not I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just really
Yeah.
interesting how these cases, they get kind of put into these categories and then overlooked by mainstream. So, anyway, this is a really interesting case. Grant Whitaker, who was deaf, a deaf 25-year-old, on August 23rd, 2019, his grandmother called police in California to report that Grant was missing. She was calling them from Mackinac, Illinois, where he lived with her until he left on a long-term camping trip to go scout some land he was looking to buy in California. He was out with his friend, 21-year-old Mavrick Fisher, who was also a deaf person.
Okay.
They had met through an online deaf community, and they decided to partner together to build a deaf agriculture commune, and, like I said, went out to California to look at this land. I
Okay.
think Maverick, uh, had the idea to do this in Humboldt. He was really big into weed. He really wanted to, like, grow a lot of weed, whereas
Okay.
Grant really wanted more to grow, like, food. So I think that was kind of Maverick's reasoning for wanting to go to California, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But he had a really large online following, like 33,000 followers, I think, on Facebook at this point, in 2019. This is before the downfall of Facebook. Not a lot before, but this is still when, like, that was a thing, you know?
Yeah. It's cooler.
Um, yeah. So he had a lot of pull in the deaf community. He could reach a lot of people, and, so he was, a good resource. Also, just Humboldt is, like, super crimey. Like, Northern California, there's so much crime up there, like, it's really
Yeah.
fucking crazy. Just wanted to point that out.
Like
Anyway,
north
as I
of
was
the Bay Area, like the urban
Yeah,
centers of the Bay Area, when you get north of
yes.
that, it gets weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder.
It gets like
Yeah.
Deliverance, like, straight up, like, it's crazy.
Yes. Yes.
There's that documentary, like, Murder Mountain. I mean, that shit's
Mm.
legit. Having spent a lot of time, like, driving through there and being up there, like, it's not like, it's a
Yeah.
pretty hardcore core area. Um, anyway, I digress, just a kinda side note on that. So, as I was saying about Grant was, like, super obsessed with agriculture. He always wanted to create this deaf community commune. He was really dedicated to learning the ins and outs of farming and growing your own food, and he was really dedicated to teaching other people, and especially those in the deaf community, how to do this. There's videos of him, like, milking cows, working in gardens, working in fields, really learning how to, like,
Yeah.
live this lifestyle.
Doing the farm thing.
Yeah, doing the farm thing. And, like I said, he lived in Illinois at this point. He had a really full life. He was super active in the deaf community. His Instagram, which is still up, says he is, quote, fearlessly and profoundly deaf.
Okay.
So, very much an advocate for deaf people. I'm not
Yeah.
sure what his job was at the time, but I know that he had a girlfriend and just, like, a really normal, nice life.
Yeah.
And people who knew him, every single one of them, said that not that he was one of the nicest, but actually the nicest person they had ever met. And I
Oh.
read this over and over and
Yeah.
over.
It's
So,
corroborated. He was nice.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Great guy, a hippie, outdoorsy dude, super mellow, sweet, big dreams, big heart. But sadly, at this time in 2019, he'd gone missing, and his grandmother was very worried. Now, she reported him missing because he hadn't reached out to her in, like, 3 days, um, and he talked to her every day. So it
Yeah.
was really weird for her. She was like, "This is not normal." We talk literally on the phone every single day.
Yeah.
At the time that she reported him missing, he had taken her car for this trip. So she also reported her car missing, which is a very smart move because now not only are they looking for Grant, but they are also separately looking for her car. So she has
Yeah,
twice the chance of, something being found.
for sure.
Pardon me. Also, what's really great is that police took this really seriously, and they began their search with Grant's grandmother giving them a lead that Grant was last known to be camping at the Richardson Grove campsite in Garberville, which is in Humboldt County. Police went there. They did not find Grant. They did not find Maverick, who he was supposed to be with. But in fact, they found a new set of campers in their site and no sign of Grant or Maverick. So they had,
Okay.
left. Police continued and expanded their search, and pretty quickly they found the missing car. And inside of Grant's grandmother's missing car, they found blood. And
Mm,
not just blood, but like blood and other, like, I don't know how to put it, like biological matter, and enough that it smelled and there were bugs in it. So it was like, I don't know what it was. Like, what would that be that's like
mm,
a liquidy goo that's not just blood, right? So they were like, this seems like there was a murder here and potentially there
yeah.
was a body in this car, right? And still no sign of either young man. So now we're going to take a minute and talk about Maverick. Maverick Fisher, or Mav as he was often called, is often said to be from Elko, Nevada, but I actually learned through my research that he was probably born right here in Burbank, California,
Oh,
where he
okay.
spent at least the first 4 years of his life. And I know this because there's an article in the Burbank Leader, which is the local Burbank paper, about his learning sign language from a Burbank high school student in 2003 when he was only 4 years old. So he was a Burbank local, born down here, and then moved to Elko, Nevada at some point. And I think that's kind of where he was raised. So that's considered his hometown. But I thought that was interesting, the connection. So anyway, he was born almost entirely deaf, and I believe lost his hearing fully, pretty early on in his life. He did at one point use some English to communicate, but I don't believe that he has for many, many years. So Maverick so Grant is quiet, he's nice, he's dedicated, he has a vision, he wants to make it happen. Maverick is kind of the opposite. He's this really
Okay.
boisterous, over the top person. Um, Definitely in his online presence, he's very like almost like combative. Like he's like a shock jock of sorts. Like he's
Okay.
often saying like divisive and shocking shit. He's
Yeah.
very animated and his like body language is very like forceful and aggressive. And
Okay.
it's hard for me because here's the thing about the deaf community. There's no talking on their videos. So he
Right.
has tons of videos. There's no closed captions and there's no sound. So for me,
Mm,
because unfortunately I don't speak, ASL,
yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know what he's saying. But members of the community mention like the specifics of what he says, and they pointed out his body language. And even before I read that, when I was like looking at videos of him, I was like, dude, this guy's aggressive. Like this guy's
Hmm.
really fucking
Yeah. I
he
mean,
seems
body language is
like
communicative even if you don't speak ASL. I think you
no
can get
matter
the
what.
vibes. Yeah.
Exactly.
For
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
So he just seems really agitated, like he's trying to get everybody's
Hmm.
attention and he's trying to hold everybody's attention as long as possible. So it's weird, like, where everybody liked Grant, nobody seemed to like Maverick. Everybody's like, "Oh, that guy's bad news." Like, "Oh, that guy,"
Yeah.
like, anybody who knew him. People who didn't know him seemed to like his online presence, like I said, he had a lot of followers, but anybody who knew him, they were like, not really into him," right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kind of an interesting contrast, and interesting that he and Grant would become friends. And
Yeah.
Grant later
Very opposite dudes.
very opposite. And Grant
Yeah.
later told his girlfriend Marissa, he was like, I want to be friends and partner with him because it will help grow my business and my idea for this community, which in turn would, help other people have a better life. So for him, it was like
For
a
the greater
business
goal.
decision.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And while the pairing of these two was pretty weird, they seemed to get along. Like they were fine. Like
Okay. Yeah.
like things worked well for a while.
Yeah.
Maverick didn't really seem to care about agriculture, but he was really into the idea of having a commune, which
Hmm.
later people are like he was into having a cult. but that's
Mm,
people's opinions, I don't really know, but
different common interests, perhaps, though. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And Grant really just he didn't care about the celebrity of being a founder. He just wanted to create this community. So, but both of them were trying to make it work for the bigger picture. And like I said, for a while things were great. But when the two went to California, they hit something of a little rough patch, right? I think Grant was having difficulty kind of dealing with Maverick's personality. Like he was getting fed up with him. He was telling his girlfriend Marissa over and over, like, I can't deal with him. Like, I'm so irritated by him all the time. Like, I just don't want to
Yeah.
fucking put up with him anymore, right? So finally, on August 18th, 2019, remember he's reported missing August 23rd. So on August 18th, Grant texts Marissa that he was going to officially and finally part ways with Maverick and go out on his own to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. He told Marissa the two were headed back home, but they were going to
Mhm.
camp in a campground for one night before Grant dropped Maverick off somewhere in California because apparently Maverick wanted to stay in California. It was his idea to come out to California. So Grant's like, I'm gonna drop him off. I'm gonna come home. He's gonna do whatever the fuck he's gonna do. That night at the campground, campground. Why can't I say that? Campground? Richardson Grove. Jesus
Campground.
Christ. Grant seemed totally fine when he texted Marissa goodnight. He's like, "Good night. I'll text you tomorrow morning. We'll talk. Whatever." Right. The next morning, he did not text her when he said he was going to, and in fact, didn't text her till around 11 a.m. And it was this really weird message from him that said due to issues with his car, he would be extending the trip at the campground for a few days. Marissa thought
Mm,
the message was weird because she was like, this doesn't sound like Grant. And specifically, she noted that he wrote the word cuz, C-U-Z. And
yeah.
Grant was the kind of person he was like you and me, where it's like, we don't usually, I've become more lax about it. You have not so much, but using like shorthand and like slang in writing.
Right, right. Not
Even
so common.
texts? No. Like, our texts are, like, proper English, and apparently
Yeah.
Grant's were as well.
Okay.
So, Marissa got really suspicious and then really worried because after that, he didn't respond to her texts anymore.
Okay.
So, she reaches out to Maverick's girlfriend, Emily, and asks, "Have you heard from him? And also, does Maverick use CUZ to write because?" And Emily's like, "Yeah,
Mm,
he does, and I haven't heard from him. What's going on?" Essentially. So at this point, Marissa and Grant's grandmother are talking, and Melissa then starts talking to police. And she tells them about these weird interactions she's having with, quote unquote, Grant, and how it sounded like Maverick was really the one texting her. Police are still searching for both men, not knowing anything really about what might have happened, and just that something bad went down in Grant's grandma's car, right?
mhm.
Then Marissa gets this idea and she says, Emily, can you reach out to Maverick? Can you like see what's going on? And Emily does, and he tells her something pretty fucking big. He says that the night the two camped, there was a big blowout fight and it had become physical. He said that Grant had attacked him with a knife, cutting his pinky finger, and that he left that night to get to safety, leaving Grant alone at the campsite.
Wow.
So, yeah. So,
Okay.
not sure what happened from there.
Doesn't
Maybe the
sound like our
idea.
nicest guy in the world.
No, it really doesn't. And
Mhm.
also, doesn't explain anything that happened next, right?
Yeah.
Nobody really believed this story in its entirety, but they do believe something went down for sure. A lot of people refer to Maverick as being like having like mental health issues, being very like hot and cold and unpredictable. So nobody's really believing him, and police really don't believe him because they have this car, they have this crime scene. Now they know that Maverick's alive, but they don't have anything to indicate that Grant is, right? So now friends start coming forward because the community, like I said, this is a huge news in the deaf community, and people are starting to talk. And one of these friends, a man named Scotty Jackson, came forward. Now he was
Okay.
friends with Maverick, not really Grant. But he reached out to police when he heard about the altercation, and he said, I just spoke with Maverick yesterday, and he told me some crazy shit.
Yeah.
Scotty says, and you can see text messages of this in like videos online, because there are copies of it. He said that Maverick told him that he's down in Mexico and he was down there because he had killed Grant.
Okay.
And so he tells his girlfriend that he ran away from Grant and left him. Then he tells his friend that he's in Mexico because he had killed Grant. And the way that he told his friend about his murdering Grant is so fucking callous and so
Mm.
fucked up. He texted that he, quote, helped Grant by ending his own life so he won't suffer by his own ego anymore.
Ugh, okay.
Then he followed that with LOL, meet me in Guadalajara! Exclamation point.
Oh my god. He just like yeah, callous is exactly the right word.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
then tried to say, "Oh, you think I would kill an innocent man? Like Grant attacked me first." So he starts backtracking when his friend is
Yeah.
like, "What exactly the fuck is wrong with you that this is how you're talking about this?" And he's like, "Oh, he attacked me. No, 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 no." He said the altercation, happened because Grant attacked him because he told Grant that he didn't want to go into business with him, which is interesting because that's what Grant very calmly told his girlfriend was
Mhm.
like, and had been telling her for weeks was, "I'm getting sick of him. I'm gonna break it off." And then he does. And now Maverick is taking that story and saying, "Well, I was the one to break it off with him." And he's really angry to the point where he attacks me with a knife,
Yeah.
which I don't know, kind of sounds like bullshit to me. I don't know,
It
Diva. What do
does.
you
Yeah.
think? Yeah.
Yeah, our
Yeah.
nicest guy in the world. Just out of the blue, just fucking
Yeah. Got
knife
really
attack.
angry that this guy that there's proof that he's been sick of dealing with. He's so
Mhm.
angry that he doesn't want to work with him, that he's going to try to kill him by cutting him in the pinky. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and we know he just was planning on just leaving. Like he didn't say like I don't know what to do about it. He was like, I'm just gonna not work with him.
I'm
Like he
going
had
to
a
drop him
calm
off
plan.
and then I'm gonna drive home. Yeah, that's not yeah, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous to think that, like, in the heat of the moment that this is Grant doesn't seem like the kinda guy that'd be like, "You don't reject me, like, I reject you." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the only way that this could potentially make sense is if, like, Maverick told Grant just before Grant was gonna tell Maverick, and Grant was, like, a weirdly egotistical guy, which is kind of what Maverick's trying to say, right? So, anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so it just sounds like bullshit. He refuses to come back to the US, but eventually, thanks to all of these texts, he is extradited. And he goes to trial, and just like that, you know, he lays out all this shit. First, he said, like I said, he ran away from Grant after Grant attacked him. Then he said he killed Grant by hitting him with a rock after Grant tried to stab him with a
Oh.
knife. So
Oof.
Grant is this like mellow, quiet, loving young man who only ever wanted to help people. Maverick has multiple videos online showing him as extremely aggressive and angry. At one point, he
Yeah.
like cuts a Bible apart with like a fucking saw and then like burns another one, and it's like religion is
Yeah.
stupid. And also Grant was like religious. Grant was like a Christian.
Okay.
So
And
really
this
weird.
guy is also like, who knows what he really believes, Maverick, but he's clearly just trying to
Yeah.
get like be shocking too.
Any kind of attention he can get. So you
Yeah.
tell me what happened, right?
Yeah.
So he does claim self-defense. That's obviously what he's going for, and that's what he's kind of been setting up from the beginning, despite his
Yeah.
extremely callous fucking texts. And also in his text, he like says he does not regret what he did at all. Before he goes to trial, they go to Maverick's friend Scotty to get the location of the body, and Maverick does tell him, and this helps them understand what happened in the car. So here's what Maverick tells Scotty. He said first he kills Grant inside the tent. Then he left him in the car for a few days near a farm they worked on in Lake County, which is about
Mhm.
130 miles south of the murder site. Then he dumped the body in that same farm,
Mhm.
parked the car nearby because they found the car in Lake County, and bailed out to Mexico. He said about Grant in his text messages to his friend, his skull is crushed AF.
Ugh, God, the
Mhm.
AF makes it
So
annoying.
insufferable. So fucking
Yeah.
insufferable.
Ugh.
So they find the body, and police use this information to get the extradition. And in 2020, the trial starts. Now, some weird things about this trial, thanks to COVID, which I just thought I would mention.
Mhm.
The
Okay.
trial is in October 2020, and it's held at an ice skating rink so it could house everybody while honoring the 6 feet rule.
Whoa.
Yeah, and also just so you guys know, because when I was driving from Oregon to LA and back and forth, Northern California don't give a fuck about COVID. Like if you were in Redding, like there were no masks. That was
No,
not a
yeah.
thing
That wasn't what
ever.
they were doing. No.
No. And this is in California, like the biggest mask state and whatever. And it's like there were whole counties that were like,
No.
that's cute. Absolutely not. Like we're
That's
gonna
not
just
what when you think of like liberal progressive California, that's not that part.
no, these people are like, how am I supposed to be able to smoke meth
Yeah.
with a mask on? Answer me that. And then they did not wear
Yeah.
them. So, sorry, Reading people, but, like, let's be real. Anyway, So they're all in this fucking ice rink doing this, which I thought was really weird and just wanted to mention. Maverick is charged with first degree murder, but he's also charged or has on like the ability of things he can be, charged or found guilty of. Assault with a deadly weapon, involuntary manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, grand theft auto, and then like illegal use of a car or something. So basically, like
Okay.
the most worst thing you can get convicted of, and then like lesser charges because he's going for self-defense. And so they have to kind of include these other charges, right?
Yeah.
So the trial starts, and from the beginning, things are sideways. Maverick said he hit Grant with a rock that fit in one hand, and that he hit him about 10 times or so in response to Grant attacking him with a knife, that he just lost control because he was scared,
Okay.
and that this knife cut his pinky finger. He said he thought Grant was going to punch him and then felt the cut and responded by defending himself. He also said he didn't at first realize that he had killed Grant, and when he realized he did, he freaked out and tried to cover it up, which is why he hid the body,
Mhm.
dumped the car, and fled to Mexico. Right, right. I mean,
Right,
makes sense.
right, yeah, that's a classic, like, "Oh, I just panicked, so I did all these
Mhm.
calculated, elaborate things."
Yes, yeah, because it was just in the spur of the moment. He
Mhm.
claimed this even though there is evidence, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, that Grant was murdered while sleeping. So in this instance, in this case, there actually is evidence of that. And that the
Okay.
damage to his skull was so extensive that it had to have been done with a large rock that would have had to be held in both hands. So
Ugh,
Maverick saying he killed him with one rock in his hand, almost like brass knuckles style. And what the fucking professional medical examiner is finding is that somebody
no.
took a giant rock and bashed him on the head with it around 20 times,
Oh, god.
essentially pulverizing him, and that he would have
Yeah,
been dead within the first few blows.
it's
So this is
overkill.
literally like intense
Yeah,
overkill, right?
yeah.
Also, the part of the skull that was crushed is literally the strongest bone in the body. So the fact that
Ugh,
it is this fucked up, there's no way you're doing that with a little handheld stone. Like that's not happening.
no, yeah,
Yeah.
the medical records doth protest Maverick.
Yes. So a prosecution comes forward. They say Maverick's angry. He planned the murder because he didn't want to be rejected. He was upset.
Yeah,
He's a fucking loose cannon. The defense said no, Grant was angry and he attacked Maverick. That's essentially it. And I'll tell you, no matter how much research I did, I watched, documentaries, YouTube videos, read articles, nobody can really explain what the fuck happened in the trial. Okay? What I
okay.
do know is that the tent was looked at and it did show a pooling of blood in one corner, like as though Grant was sleeping and had been hit. But the tent had been folded up and put away while the blood was still wet. So there was no way to know if it like moved as a result of that or what the deal was. So that made that the only piece of evidence that wasn't like an obvious slam dunk, right?
Okay.
Also, there was a man who owned that farm where, Grant's body was found, and Grant and Maverick had been working on that farm, and Grant actually got kicked off the farm for getting in an argument
Mm,
with the farmer about the way that things were done, and that gave Maverick a little bit of leverage in being like, "Well, Grant's also a hothead. Like, it's not just me. He's not this perfect person." Right?
yeah.
The jury, uh, came back after 3 days with a verdict of not guilty of
Oh my
first-degree murder.
god. Oh my god.
They
It's gonna
also
make me
said
start coughing.
I know, I heard you, like, starting to, like they also
Oh my
said
god.
that he was not guilty of voluntary manslaughter, nor was he guilty of grand theft auto, but he was guilty of involuntary manslaughter because he'd just gone a little too far in defending himself from
Oh my
Grant.
god, yeah,
This
and
is
I love the exact, contrast. It's a good pairing because it's like,
it really is. It really is.
this
Yep.
woman, like, has mountains of evidence that she clearly did self-defense, and they're like, "We don't like that you're a woman," and this
Yeah.
guy's like, the evidence is like, "He smashed a giant rock in his head," and they're like, "That sounds like self-defense to us. Good
Yeah.
job, guy."
My next notes are this is despite the text messages of him laughing about this. This is despite the autopsy results and the results of the tent, even those are a little bit iffy. I mean,
Mm,
all of these together, this is like so clearly slam dunk fucking case.
yeah,
Everybody was like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" And I mean, I'm so glad you did the case that you did right before this. It could
yeah,
not have been better because what the motherfuck. And I want to say
yeah,
this. I honestly believe that part of his verdict had to do with him being deaf, and the jury infantilized him. They saw
Yeah.
him as
Yeah.
more innocent, less capable,
Mhm.
less human, so less given to actual real human emotions because he can't hear.
It's
I
classic,
guarantee
yeah,
you.
and people with disabled folks are always infantilized like that, like, "Oh, he couldn't have done
Always.
anything," you know? Like, it's
Right.
like,
Yeah, he's not capable.
"He
Yeah,
couldn't
it's
even
like
hear."
yeah, and it's like, do you not like, what? I
Dude could
guarantee
pick
you.
up a rock, clearly, like,
Yeah,
he's
dude is
not
burning Bibles on YouTube, like, he's pretty,
he's
he's a
capable
pretty
of many
normal,
strange things, yeah.
fucked up things, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, my next 2 notes were he can't hear, he's not an idiot. So,
Yeah.
the judge was also blown away by this, they were like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, did you see the same trial
Yeah.
that I fucking saw?" So, they gave Maverick the harshest sentence possible. Harsh, you ready? You ready for how harsh his sentence
Mhm,
was?
mhm.
The harshest sentence he could be given for involuntary manslaughter and unlawful, like, taking of a car, whatever the fuck it's called, 4 years.
Oh my god. I feel like
He was
this is
given
not
4
just
years.
infantilizing him, it's also devaluing Grant's
Grant.
life as well.
Yeah, neither one of them really matter, so whatever the case
Yeah.
ends up being isn't that big of a deal. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Maverick was out in 19 months. He was out by 2021
Ugh,
and,
okay.
has openly stated that he has no remorse for killing Grant. He actually
Wow.
Marissa, Grant's girlfriend, FaceTimed him and was like, Are you remorseful?" And he was like, "Nope." Yeah.
Wow, that's so shitty for Grant's family to know. Not only that he got
Mhm.
out and all that shit, but he's not even like, "Sorry, I smashed
Yeah.
your loved one's head in." Like,
Yeah.
because he can still stick to the self-defense bullshit. But I'm sorry, like, also, even if Grant did cut his pinky finger, it's kind of a disproportionate level of force to go from cut on the pinky to bashed your head in
Well, the
as
craziest
well.
thing is that Grant was in the tent, by Maverick's own words, which are all fucking lies, but let's just like, he didn't even think this through very well and somehow still got lucky. Grant was inside the tent. Maverick was outside the tent when this happened. So Grant punches at him and cuts his finger. Let's just say that's what really happened. Maverick said he then went outside of the tent, grabbed a rock, came back into the tent,
Yeah.
and beat Grant to death. How is that self You're
Oh
already
my
out of the
god.
tent. Just keep going. It's the same thing. Oh, well, if she had a car, she could have just left. Well, he was outside the fucking tent. He did not have to go back in. Even if what he says is true, which it's not, he went back in because he was angry. But what really happened was that he murdered him in cold blood, in my opinion, because he was angry. I don't want to get
Yeah.
sued, but that's my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, it's
So,
a second degree, basically, at the minimum.
at
Like,
minimum.
yeah.
But here's the weirdest thing. Yesterday, when I was researching this, I saw someone say that they were watching one of his vlogs, his video logs, which I could not find. I can't find any of his social media, but 13 hours, well, now it's been like 37 hours. It was about 24 hours ago. It was a posted 13 hours prior on Facebook that said, I watched Maverick's most recent vlog where he admitted to using 2 hands
Mm.
to kill Grant with a rock and started to show remorse. So I really do think that he can be rehabilitated. And what I was
Mm.
thinking is, can he be recharged now that we
Yeah.
have him in a video, you know?
Well, the family could do a civil suit, there's always that trick.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, Jesus, that's, like, very it's giving, like, very OJ vibes too, like, just
yes.
now he's shameless and he can just brag about it, and also this
If I
guy.
killed, yeah, if I did it or
Yeah,
whatever the fuck.
knowing his
Yeah.
personality too, sounds like he would get off on bragging about killing someone just to be edgy and shit.
I think that's what he's doing. He's just a fucking idiot edgelord who's
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
trying to stay relevant, and my biggest hope is that that bites him in the ass, like, epically. Like, I would be
yeah,
so happy if in response to this fuckery, he just got, like, arrested and charged with murder and went to prison forever. That would just be amazing. So anyway, if we could just reverse those 2 sentences for these cases, the verdicts and sentences, then we would be living in a country that I wouldn't hate with every fiber of my being, but here we are.
yeah,
So,
yeah, like,
wow.
exactly, flip them. Yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
that would be great. Fuck everyone.
wow.
Fuck this. Goddamn.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, I wanted to say on our, like, list of cases I brainstormed, I probably the 8th time I put Kyle Rittenhouse on there just to, like, kind of troll Cindy to do it.
No,
Do it,
nope,
Cindy, do
nope,
it.
nope. I'm
Um, But
doing that turd. He's too much in the media. He'll fucking find us and like try to draw me
no,
into
that's
some
true.
shit. Like that
But
guy's such a con.
if we hashtagged him, think of the arguments you could get in on our comment section. Like, I would just love to
Oh
see
my
it play out.
god.
I
They
mean,
would be
that
epic,
is
truly.
that I mean, George Zimmerman and him are definitely the top of the crop of, like, the most insanely breakingly angering, quote, unquote, "self-defense" cases
The
that succeeded.
the day that you are willing to choose the topic, cases that make Cindy and Diva the most angry, I will consider doing it.
The
But
most angering
I f
cases.
I feel like we got close today. Like, I am ready to
Mm.
just go, like, take
That's
a
a good list
shower and, like,
idea,
watch
actually,
this.
because there's a couple that I keep putting on there that we can't pick because 'cause we're too mad.
Yeah,
Um,
I know, that would be a good one. Uh,
mm,
but this was close. Like, I felt my
yeah,
blood
yeah.
pressure rising, like, as you
Yeah,
were
and for
telling
a
me.
while, I researched also Nikki's case without really realizing the ending. Like, I kind of, like, was reading all these
Oh,
things, and then I was just, like, frantically searching, like, "But what happened?" And I'm like,
yeah,
"Oh
that's
my
fucked
god."
up.
Yeah,
That's fucked.
but it's
Ugh,
kind of good.
yeah. I mean, it's better than what it could be, but still,
Yes,
what
better
the
than a life
motherfuck.
sentence, which a lot of folks in her situation get, apparently.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
that's insane. Okay, guys, please like, rate, review, share with your friends and family. Like I said, we're having all these like weird, like conservatives giving us bad reviews, just because of our politics, which like go fuck
yeah,
yourself if you don't
it's
like it.
awesome.
So if you guys want to give us reviews to combat the bullshit, we would appreciate it. No pressure. We have
Mhm.
lots of good reviews. We're doing fine, but I do check every day, and I get a little like endorphin rush whenever I see a new good review. So do me a
Yeah.
solid. Do us both a solid. Thanks everybody for listening. Tune into the next set of these if you'd like to rage along with us some more. I'm sure they will be equally upsetting.
Mhm.
And anything else? That's it, right?
Well, that's it.
That's it. All right. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. And until the next horrible half,
Stay.
off our
Bliss.
ciao.
Yeah. Bye.